Hi, I'm Leslie Kenton, and this is Kari Kari Beach in the far north of New Zealand. It looks like a great place for a holiday, and it is. Each year, thousands of people flock to this stretch of coastline to enjoy its warm, sunny climate and the possibility of relief from the stresses of modern life. But for one group of mammals, this coastline is no place for a holiday. It spells danger, where the loss of life can be unusually high. It was here that a pod of long-finned pilot whales discovered just how devastating a coastline can be. Last spring, the whales managed to beach themselves here, and not just once, but twice. Around 100 whales beached themselves this day. Tragically, some died almost instantly, while the survivors lay helpless, struggling for breath, the very weight of their bodies crushing their lungs. Fortunately, for these whales, help was at hand. The whales were thought to have beached around lunchtime, but because of the remoteness of the location, weren't found until about 3 that afternoon. Officers from New Zealand's Department of Conservation were soon notified of the stranding, as was Rhys Nolan, a key figure for the conservation group Project Jonah, a volunteer organization dedicated to the preservation and survival of marine animals.
Well, I first heard about the stranding late in the afternoon while I was still working in Auckland. And as usual, you want to leap in the car and head off for where it is and what's going to happen. But I was told there were around about 80 odd animals on the beach, and a number of people had already headed off in desperation to be there. It seemed to me as though the stranding was going to go on for very many hours, so I decided that I was going to try and sleep a bit, because I knew basically we were going to be there for at least 24 hours. But 3 o'clock in the morning, the emotion takes over and you can't stay there anymore. You've got to be with these poor animals. And I left and drove up from Auckland at about that time.
The teams rallied as many helpers as they could, but by the time they reached the beach, it was already 5 o'clock, and many of the whales had been out of the water and without help for too long.
When I arrived on the scene, there was a tangle of whales in the surf, and there was a sense of chaos and the awareness of the need to get those whales separated. It's always a pretty urgent scene, and the feeling that are there enough people to actually lift these whales and move them to safety?
There it was, 80 odd animals on the beach, and lots of them with the red marks on, which indicates that we've got dead animals. It's a horrifying thing.
Time was now crucial. The rescuers would need to work quickly if those whales that were still alive were to be saved.
Nothing is ever done during the night in the way of refloating the animals. Although the tide had come in at about 2 o'clock in the morning, the decision is for people's safety that you just simply will not refloat during the night. There's been far too many times when we discover that people in their absolute enthusiasm to look after the animals can't actually swim. And here they are sort of quarter of a mile off the shore. So now it's a dock policy that you won't refloat during the night.
This would mean a cold overnight vigil for the rescue teams, one that not everyone was up to.
Then people tend to get tired and they want to go home. So a lot of people did leave the beach around about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, leaving a skeletal shift to go through the night. And really there weren't enough people on the beach that particular night looking after the whales, and it made it very, very hard work for the people who were there.
For those people who could stay, the night would be a special time.
Really is a unique experience being on the beach with whales at any time, and the relationship formed between the people and the whales is really special. But it's heightened at night, like all of your senses are heightened at night. You tend to feel things more, you tend to hear things more. And then of course we've got the other scenario where people are tired and they're physically exhausted. So you've got teams of people looking after their whale, and it certainly becomes their whale, and looking after each other, chatting about all kinds of things. People of totally different backgrounds with one whale, with one common goal to actually get that whale floating again.
You like a chin tickle, don't you? Darling? You like a chin tickle?
I hope they survive.
Some of them will. Some of them will. You know, put this into it and then them all go. We'll win some.
Hope was high, but how many would survive the night through to the next tide?
It's an overcast day in Kaitaia. Temperature outside is 14 degrees. It's now 15 minutes past 9 o'clock, and news just to hand. A pod of pilot whales have beached themselves on Karikari Beach.
By the second morning, even the local radio station was coming to the aid of the stricken whales.
Volunteers to go down to the beach to help with the reflotation of the whales and to provide food and drinks for workers who have been with the whales through the night.
Hundreds of volunteers and onlookers flocked to the peninsula. For the rural town of Kaitaia, it was big news, and the beach was a mass of people. Many were just curious, but most wanted to be able to help in some way, whether it was on shore making tea and coffee for weary volunteers, or braving the cold water to gently nurse a stranded whale. And it wasn't just the whales that were still alive that attracted the attention of onlookers. So did the rows of more than 50 of these beautiful creatures, now dead. As they lay lifeless in the sand, reality hits. This stranding will have a devastating effect. The bodies of the dead whales had been tagged and towed away from the shore. Among the rescuers, there's a real sense of sadness that time just wasn't kind on this occasion. More whales might have been saved if they had been found earlier. It's hard, heavy work, and it takes several people to attend to the needs of each whale. So it's important the rescuers are as gentle as possible. Then the whale's suffering is minimized.
It'll peel off just like black glad wrap. So be careful.
The care and feelings for these animals is touching.
Come on.
pilot whales are not small animals. While they may be one of the smaller of the family of whales, in comparison to man, we are dwarfed by these huge mammals. Some of them grow up to 8 meters in length and weigh up to 5 tons.
Department of Conservation officers who were coordinating the rescue from the shore had brought in diggers, fire trucks, and other large machinery to help. High tide was fast approaching. With only a limited amount of equipment, teams would need to work quickly to get all the whales into the water on time.
We have some lifters! Where are the hand please? Lifters!
As each whale is prepared to be lifted into the sea, it's obvious the process is not comfortable for them. The Project Jonah volunteers use specially designed pontoons that are inflated around each whale and make transporting it to the tide line an easier task.
The pontoon system was evolved in the early 80s as a far more benign method of getting marine mammals afloat. The average pilot whale weighs something in excess of 2.5 tonnes, and obviously in shallow water it wants to float in the best part of waist deep water. To aid the rescue, the system was designed, which is something like a kitset inflatable boat with a mat underneath which has self-drain holes in it. The pontoon tubes are attached to it and then inflated using normally a dive bottle. There are a number of sets of these distributed around the country and in fact now around the world, which Project Jonah is very, very proud of. Generally when we arrive on a beach as trained marine mammal medics, the department asks us to take over the getting animals into them. A large part of the reason why we like to use them is that it distributes the weight of the animal, lifts it, but still in the water, so you're just aiding its natural flotation.
With the help of a digger, a channel is dredged which allows the seawater up to the whale, and in just a few feet of water the rescue team can drag the whale to the relative comfort and safety of deeper water. Whales are used to being in water that's considerably colder than the waters that run along the coast, so they would be feeling quite warm as they are nursed in the shallows. For the rescuers, it's a completely different story. They will need to stay with the whales and nurse them for another couple of hours before they can be released. The water is cold, and lots of people don't have the protective clothing they need. Many rescuers are just wearing the clothes they arrived in, and by now they are chilled to the bone.
It is fairly cold, but if you've got a good wetsuit, it's fine. And if you keep moving, yeah. I feel sorry for some of those people out there. They've got light clothing on, and they must be very cold by now.
Yeah, it's freezing. And I think I've got hypothermia.
Department of Conservation Officer Richard Parrish updates the latest developments.
And this morning it's been a question of getting them into the water. We've got currently 5 whales in pontoons. They've been towed out to sea, and they're going to be used as a nucleus for the other whales. When we let them go, they've got somewhere to head for.
Back on the beach, Bruce Wardell, field center manager for DOC,
checks on the progress of the whales held on pontoon.
If you can just motor and turn now so that you've got the head of the animal facing towards the beach where we are, towards the stranding site, over.
Instructions are then given to the rescue teams to turn their whales out towards the bay so they can be released back into the deep.
Can you turn the whales out to sea?
Some of the whales circle uncertainly. Others regain their sense of direction. There the rescuers wait, trying to prevent the whales turning back towards the land. Finally, the bewildered creatures go, heading out to sea to the delight of their human helpers. And after 4 hours in chilly water, it was also a relief.
It's freezing. Yeah. Worth it though. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, it's great. Yep. It's a great feeling.
Is it worth it?
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
That's how they all stay out there now.
It's been more than just today's hard work. It was yesterday's and all night last night too, and yeah, huge amount of effort's gone in, and it's looking good at this stage. It really is. There will be 1 or 2 whales who may not make it, but we've got 46, 47 whales into the water, so we've done really well. All but 2 of those 53 that died immediately when they stranded. 2 died overnight. So we've done really well. In fact, we've only lost 2 whales so far. Well, we've got some lead whales out on the pontoons, which hopefully are calling the other whales towards them. And hopefully they'll head out to sea and we won't see them again.
Sadly, fate was to inflict a cruel blow, and the next morning the whales would be back. In the early hours of the following morning, local resident Diane Boyd was awakened by strange noises coming from the beach below her house. In the pitch black, she slipped and slid her way down a rickety cliffside path to the beach.
When I came out through the Purakawas and I came across the sand dunes, I could see that there was quite a large pod there, quite a few of them. Yes, it was very sad actually, seeing them all there and knowing that you can't do much about them, and totally surprised that nobody was there, and I was on my own. But yes, I saw this little one on its own and thought, oh, maybe I can give it a hand, because it was sort of rolling around and flapping its tail, and then I thought, well, because they're so, even if it's little, it's still big compared to me, and I thought, oh no, better not. Better leave it alone and go back and get help.
Yes, the whales were back.
Well, after they refloated yesterday, they swam up and down parallel to the shore, 20 metres offshore most of the time, and we shepherded them until dark, about 6 hours, and then we checked the beach again at 10 o'clock with a spotlight, and there was no sign of them. So, but we got a phone call about 1:45 this morning and say they'd restranded.
Now the whales had beached themselves on an even more remote stretch of sand, and that meant new problems.
To get equipment in was even harder. An hour into the thing we realised we had no shovels whatever, and this beach was rather sandy, so there were very, very sore hands from scratching out sand around the animals.
Choosing the key whales to lead the group out again was now even more difficult, because some of those chosen on day 1 had died overnight in the second stranding. In all, there'd been another 18 casualties. So the rescue crews swung into action again to try to stabilize the remainder of the pod. And once more, it was a waiting game until the tide was high. Just why whales beach themselves, nobody knows. There are many theories, but none of them have been conclusively proven. What we do know is there are certain similarities in the strandings.
Well, whale strandings, mass strandings are not, they don't occur randomly. They occur in particular sites around the world, and we call those sites whale traps. And when you analyse them, they're all very, very similar. They have long sandy beaches. They're very shallow shelving beaches, either with a headland at either end or at one end. And we believe that they are getting good sonar readings off the headlands, but very, very poor sonar readings off the shelving beaches, because sand's not a good medium for returning sonar, and the angle of the shore means that it probably just disperses. So we think they're getting very poor readings, and they're probably chasing food, and they get into shallow water, and being oceanic whales, they don't understand tides, so they end up getting stranded.
There have been about 15 mass strandings on this peninsula this century. So what might be bringing the whales in? Animal behavioural specialist Professor Peter Jenkins.
Well, one very important reason why they come inshore, of course, is to follow their prey. It's well established in North America that the pilot whales follow the migration patterns of the squid, which is almost exclusively their food. And as the squid move along and inshore, the whales will follow them. Now, whether this brings them to the point where they actually strand on the shore or not, it's hard to tell, but certainly they come in close. It's well established also that many squid swarm in shallow water at the time of mating, and that would of course be a great occasion for the whales to get a good feed. It's almost certain that the echolocation is not for navigation, it's rather for food finding. So they may get thoroughly confused if they come into shallow water. And the first time in their lives they get crazy readings from sandy shelving beaches. There's also the idea that it's got something to do with tides or the state of the moon or the weather and all sorts of other things that are supposed to actually bring them ashore and put them at risk of stranding.
But once taken out to deep water, why would they return a second time, and so soon? Professor Jenkins has a theory it may have something to do with their larger cousins, the orca whales.
One wonders whether they can hear their great arch enemy, the killer whales, offshore waiting for them to come out and be gobbled up. And in a state of confusion and exhaustion from being on the beach, they would be easy prey to the orca. One wonders whether it's very sensible for them not to go out there.
On this occasion, the rescue teams believe one particular whale held the key to the mass return, and indeed may have been instrumental in the whole tragedy.
Usually it's because there's one animal that might be sick or something like that. That animal strands, and because they're so socially strong, they talk to each other and communicate with each other and drag the other animals on. In this case, we think it was the very heavily pregnant female that was attracting the other animals back on.
We decided that one very pregnant female looked very unwell, and we thought she would cause us some problems if we refloated her, so we made the decision to put her down.
She was the most up current of the animals, in other words, the nearest to where the current was flowing along the beach. She had another couple of younger females there apparently trying to assist. So a suggestion was made to the department that perhaps for the good of 20-odd animals that one should be euthanized who may well have not survived again. Stressful to see an animal that you've attached a lot of time to and devotion and care having to be put down.
It's quite big, and it's a female.
The social structure that brought the pod of pilot whales to the beaches of Kerry-Kerry-on-Moss is an extremely well-developed one. Living in depths of up to 200 or 300 meters, on the edge of the continental shelf, there's a great cohesion between families.
Pilot whales live in very tightly organised social groups. They're family parties probably together, mixed males, mature females, and young, and even down to grandchildren. Whether they have a hierarchy is very hard to tell, but it's very likely, since male pilot whales are twice the weight of the females, and that suggests that there's a good deal of competition between males for access to the females, and that will of course lead to a hierarchy.
But would it be possible for a female to be a lead whale and take the pod in her wake?
Oh yes, it's been perfectly possible, although of those records that have been made, observations that have been made about the lead whale in pilot groups, is that the animal is a large one, and that probably suggests that it was a male rather than a female.
Whoever led the pod astray, it's now becoming clear the whales are more stressed than yesterday, and the task of releasing them a second time may be even greater. An important part of the social structure of pilot whales is communication. Each whale has its own unique sound, so other members of the pod can easily identify it.
Of all the forms of energy that move through water, sound is the most efficient by a long margin. Consequently, most communication in water is by sound. Vision isn't too good because water, you can't see very far in water, and sound is just the ideal way of communicating. The longfin pilot whales make a whole series of sounds which are used in social situations amongst themselves, holding the group together. There's two things about social organisation that which makes sounds very important. One is that you can have individual sounds for individual people, and the others can recognise them as individuals. And the second, of course, is that there must be some way of actually communicating by the actual noises themselves. There is a third thing about sounds in whales of this kind, and that is the echolocation sounds. Now these are quite different from the social sounds. Echolocation sounds are short bursts, very intense intensity of high frequency clicks which bounce off objects and come back to the whale, giving them some indication of what's out there in the water. Now these two kinds of sounds, social communication and echolocation, are quite separate.
The whales were very quiet on the first day, but now they're very vocal, and the clicks and squeals are no more apparent than the greeting between a baby whale and its missing mother.
Another youngster came flying in from out at sea somewhere and joined up with its mother, and that young animal was very vocal.
You probably noticed that the mother and calf that were there were making absolutely stunning sounds, speaking to each other, communicating with each other.
Certainly the youngster that came in was talking a lot, but I think he was just so pleased to see his mother.
But some of the sounds the whales make are just plain bizarre. Sample this rare recording. You'd swear it was a trumpet or someone trying to mimic one, but no,
It's this remarkable whale. Little wonder he got his nickname, Dizzy Gillespie.
The sounds that the whales make are quite amazing. Everything from tiny little squeaks to each other, which can be heard above water, to the absolutely bizarre sounds that one particular whale makes there. Who knows? Well, I've never heard anything like it before. It just must have heard something somewhere.
So how does he do it?
Those whales that are on the beach made some strange noises. Some of them sounded rather like a horn sound, and they also seemed to be coming from the blowhole, which I found as very strange. Partly because for a very long time now, for 50 or 100 years, there's a great deal of argument as to how whales make their noises, whether they make them in their larynx, as we do, or whether they make them by the air being reverberated inside their nasal passages. There's evidence in both directions, and there's no conclusion about this. I was very puzzled about those noises that they were making, and I was wondering whether they were in fact a natural part of the whale's repertoire.
It seems this communication is not just restricted to conversations between whales. Human contact brings its own kind of wavelength.
Also noticed that when people walked in front of them, they made an awful lot more noise too.
I don't know how a whale thinks, but certainly when you get them in the water, they seem to know that you're trying to help them, and they do generally try and assist you.
People sensed whether the whales were comfortable or not. The whales were communicating to each other when they were comfortable. When they weren't comfortable, they were opening their mouths a lot and they were thrashing a lot. And when they were happy, they seemed to really appreciate the attention that people were giving them, and of course the people really fed on that as well.
Our fascination with these creatures is legendary, and so is our pursuit of them. In the olden days, whaling was a large commercial industry which brought to the brink of extinction many whale species that are only just now beginning to restore their numbers. Now, of course, whaling is banned in most countries, and world environmental groups are working hard, holding summits, calling for moratoriums to prevent whaling throughout the world.
In the past, local Maori harpooned whales for food, and indeed, no part of the whale was wasted.
The meat is being carved to eat, the skin for feeding their pigs, which was those days known as kunikunis, little fat things. Eat very little, and the meat, the bones were done into carving, the rib parts for earrings, earrings and tikis and all that.
Nowadays, a tapu has been placed on whaling. However, if there is a fatal stranding, such as the pregnant whale in this case, the local Maori are among the first consulted.
In this case, the whales, some of them have been autopsied to see if we can learn why they came ashore. The local Maori here have decided that they don't want to have any meat off them. They've been offered the bone, and probably will subsequently be given the lower jaw bones, or some of the lower jaw bone, which they'd use for whalebone carving.
The whale itself is a tapu thing, like like a god to the Maori people. But if there's any stranding of whales on the beaches, the Maori people would like the bones handed back to the iwi or the tribes to carry on their Maori culture, art and craft.
Yet whales are still hunted creatures. We may no longer want to kill them, but we certainly want to get close to them, to see them, to touch them. And we keep trying to find ways to communicate with these highly intelligent and social beings. And so we continue to interfere with their world, with the way they live and the way they die. And because there is still so much that we don't understand, we often unwittingly contribute to their demise.
As both whale and rescuer patiently wait for the tide to turn, the whales are gently rocked back and forth. And although it's a loving, caring action, there's also another very important reason for it.
They all need to be balanced, get their equilibrium back. They're dizzy, so they're all supposed to be stable and then get turned around at one time.
The head of the whale is full of a thing called melon oil. When they lie on their sides, that goes to one side of their head. So if we don't rock the whales, then it's all of that is on one side, or a good proportion of it. And then when they're standing upright, they think they're leaning over, so they swim in circles. And when you rock them, it just gives it a chance to settle back onto an even level inside their head.
The rescuers must be very careful doing this. Whale skin is extremely fragile and can split even under the very slightest pressure.
Oh, it was like rubber? Yeah, really smooth rubber.
Soft, and it flakes off if you're too rough, like it splits.
Yeah, you have to be really gentle with them.
Their skins are very, very sensitive, and they also bruise very easily. And some of the things that we had to put them through would have been very rough on them, but there was no other way.
An open wound can easily leave the animal vulnerable to infection. And in their already weakened state, this could be traumatic. So if the task is so fraught with difficulty, and the odds of keeping most alive so small, why do we do it?
I don't know. I guess there's something in all of us that likes to look after things that are more helpless than us, like picking up a crying baby or patting a dog that looks distressed or any of those sort of things. And I guess we've also all got a little bit in us that we feel somewhat guilty for all the whalers in our collective history.
Finally, the ordeal is just about over. The tide is high. Rescue coordinators have selected what they believe to be the lead whales and taken them out in the bay on pontoons. Rhys does a final check on each of the other whales before they're released. Some obviously seem more eager to go than others. Then Dock Officer Bruce Wardell gives his charges their final instructions.
Okay, folks, can you hear me? All right, what we want you to do is turn the boats out there with the pontoons on facing here. I want you to, when we say to turn your whales, we'll give you the word to release them, and then we want to form a human fence between them and the beach.
There's naturally jubilation as each whale is finally released.
Release the whales.
The rescuers now move closer together to form a human barrier to the beach. Some link arms and hold hands, determined not to let their long-time patients back ashore. Some of the whales are still a little disorientated and don't move very far. If they swim in a circle, they're likely to re-strand again.
They just did this all yesterday afternoon till dark. They go out, come back, and go out, and come back.
They seem confused.
With an animal that has such an intense social organisation, that organisation is broken up, presumably, by the experience of being on the beach. Maybe the lead animals, maybe the important ones are dead, maybe the whole state of the social group is in chaos, and the result of that is that the animals just mill around, as it were, leaderless and without any purpose.
Finally, the pod moves out. and 3 days' concerted effort reaches fulfillment.
Initially they just kept very close to the shore, but in the last hour they've been swimming very strongly. They're now about 600 metres offshore. They're not swimming in quite the right direction, but they are going out. And at the moment we're bringing over the 2 whales we have in pontoons to meet up with them, and then once that happens we're going to, with the whales still in the pontoon, we're going to turn around and head out to sea and see if we can try and lead them with a couple of carrots.
When the whales swim over the horizon, there's tears rolling down everybody's cheeks. It's a moment of sort of parting that you can't understand. How can it happen when you're something that you've known for less than 12 hours is like watching your deepest friend disappear at the airport? And, no, we just all feel it, I guess, that something's gone.
This time it looks as though they will stay out. And though more than half of the pod was lost, only 4 whales died in human care, a testament to skill, tenacity, and love.
A happy ending for those that survived. But despite all the human help in our story, the fact remains that we humans are still the greatest threat that there is to these gentle giants. Perhaps the only way that we will ever really help is for us to become aware that as human beings, every action we take affects not only our friends the whales, but the whole of the natural world around us. Maybe then we will be able to enjoy the closeness with our friends the whales and at the same time learn to respect their wildness. For as someone once so beautifully said, in wildness lies the preservation of the world.